the 2017 champion. Will he get the bumper? Yes, he does. Here comes Logano. Logano on the inside. A drag race. They're sideways. And it's going to be Logano getting the win.
Great job, buddy.
Logano put the bumper to the back of the 78 when they were going through 3 and 4. It moved Truex Jr. up the track enough that he had an opening. Well, and you see the thumbs up from Joey Logano, but Martin Truex Jr. thumbs down.
All right, everybody, welcome back. This is episode 10 of Dirty Air, your number one podcast for all DFS gambling-related stuff with NASCAR. A little different this week. Brandon still away from some Easter Sunday traveling, so he's not here today. But I am joined by Jason Hamlet, DFS NASCAR on Twitter. Jason, what's up?
Hey, what's up? Yeah, it's going to be tough trying to fill both pairs of shoes without Brandon here, but we'll try to give it a go and get her done and hopefully get everybody prepared for Martinsville.
Yeah, as I say, you're going to have to up your game because otherwise I'm going to have to give some analysis, and then that's never a good thing. So.
No, I'm gonna definitely probably have to get some of your analysis because there's some spots here I think on this slate that it's good to have somebody else's opinion. But refrain from some of the shock absorber questions that you typically pass off to Brandon. Like if you ask some of that shit to me, we may end up in the weeds real quick.
Well, then I'll start off with something easy with you. So we'll go. We always do. Wasn't last week, but 2 weeks ago. This is kind of where I do wish we did have Brandon because I feel like Brandon might have a different opinion. I have no idea where you stand on this. The Bristol Dirt race. As a casual fan who really doesn't know what he's watching, I like something different. As long as it's not catastrophic, I thought it was fun to watch. What do you think?
I enjoyed the race. It wasn't as big of a catastrophe as I thought it was going to be. Yeah, it wasn't what we expected out of dirt, what you expect when you think of dirt racing. You wanted to see that high line, but we knew that wasn't going to happen. We knew they weren't going to be able to develop a cushion. So I think the track played out like what we expected it to. But from a race standpoint, I thought it was a fun product to watch on TV. I mean, it wasn't, like I said, it sucked. They did the whole single file restarts. That kind of was a kick in the nuts as a fan because that was kind of, you like to see those double file restarts to kind of add a little chaos. But it was a fun race. I was thoroughly entertained.
Yeah, I had a couple big takeaways from it. The first was that there are always those NASCAR hardos that love their classic style and they love whatever. And I even heard some drivers on the radio, they were talking about this. They were upset that during these stages they were being held for 10, 15 minutes extra so that they could get the track fixed. But you know what? If they don't hold them, then there's those holes, there's everything in the track, and it's like you can't win with them because it's like at this point you're not losing any spots on pit road. I mean, I just don't understand why. I understand the complaints you can have about the race, but something like that, it's just like if they don't do that, you're going to complain the second they get on the track, and you're going to say they're ruining the track, and it's just part of dirt racing is you got to keep up with the track. It's just that's how dirt racing works.
Yeah, I mean, you saw as much effort as they put into it, it still didn't really matter. The track got pretty hard and dried out really quick regardless of what they did. But you have to do it. I mean, they were trying to put on a dirt show. I mean, they had to take time. But, it's NASCAR Twitter. They'll complain about something every single week, man. I don't get it. There's some people who act like they love the sport, and then it's just I think they just love to complain about the sport. But from a fan, if you were watching it on TV, I don't think it was a bad TV product at all. Now, from a DFS standpoint, I did not do very well. And I don't think that the data that we can take away from that race is going to mean anything for the rest of the year. So, typically, after these races, I'm recapping the race and going in and looking and seeing who rid what and what that would tell us for the rest of the season. But for this data, I buried it. I buried it until next year until the dirt track comes back up again because I don't see us needing to visit it again until then. And who knows, next year, they might come with a different clay. They're going to change some things. So next year, what we learn this year may not even mean anything next year.
And you kind of mentioned it before. The other thing that I was going to talk about, I like, as a casual fan, listening to these radioactives that NASCAR does, listening to the different drivers talking and hearing their different opinions. And one of the most interesting things that I thought that came out of that was when you had talked about that they went to single file. On Logano's radio, when they said this, they said, it'll be single file this time. And he just, as a driver, was like, all right, let's do it. As he's basically okay, I haven't done this in forever. Let's do this. And it was just kind of, I do think, like you said, it was different, but even we're used to the double file lines. I do think it did maybe it added a little bit of like, okay, well, let's see what, like Denny didn't really know what to do. He was kind of told get to the bumper and try and get there, and he never really got to the bumper. It almost added like another extra little suspense of like, hey, it's dirt, and now we're single file. Like, this is not a shit show, but this is just something different, and this is just, a spectacle to see right now. That's how I looked at it.
Yeah, it added something to it, but I mean, I think that thing surprised me is like the drivers seemed surprised by it, and obviously us as fans were surprised by the call. And I think Bob Pockrass actually summed it up pretty good in an article he wrote after it, just explaining that, if NASCAR would have been forward with everybody from the get-go and said that this could be a possibility if it got dusty, and was just clear about that before the race, during the week, just to let the drivers know, let the fans know. I mean, I know your dirt track fans know, hey, this is pretty typical in dirt racing, but it's not something that a NASCAR fan would know. So I think that's just poor education by NASCAR, and I think that's what's kind of created a lot of the backlash, because it caught me off guard. Like, NASCAR just changed the rules right in the middle of this race, really? But I mean, I get it. I know it wasn't safe. They couldn't see, but you feel like they should have probably communicated that a little better.
Yeah, and it's one of those things we even talk about with this podcast. It's like, it's our first year doing it. We're going to learn and we're going to get better. And it's just, that's kind of what they're doing with the dirt. It's the first time they've done it like that. They're going to learn. They're going to get better. Like you said, maybe it's a different kind of clay than you use next year. Maybe it's different layering. Who knows? But, if this
maybe
is
they
obviously
bank it differently.
I
mean, yeah, they're definitely going to learn. They're going to take some things that they've seen this year. They're going to make adjustments. I know it seemed like they missed a lot on this year, but I mean, it was a big undertaking. They covered Bristol with dirt and did something that hasn't been done in 50 years. And I think, surprisingly, it wasn't as terrible as we all thought it was going to be.
And I forgot whose it was. I think it might have been Alex Bowman's radio where they said, can you imagine doing this again next year? And he was like, yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. And they're like, nope, just announced it on, on the grandstands here, back Bristol 2022 spring or whatever, whatever they said. It's just kind of, I think it just, like you said, just added to, it was a spectacle. They're going to try and figure it out as they go, especially if they're committing to doing it for, they're obviously going to put more research into it every year and figure out, how they can make it better. So
yeah, it was neat seeing these guys and these teams out of their comfort zone. It's not something we get to see every week, and I like, NASCAR also what we saw on April 1st. It wasn't an April Fool's Day joke, but they went out and tested rain tires at Martinsville, and it's something they're considering racing I think on a wet surface, not in the rain, but on a short flat track. So I think things like that NASCAR can add into the sport that keeps these drivers and keeps these teams on their toes only increases the entertainment value on TV.
And the one other thing I did see on Twitter, and I think it's hard because I do understand this counts for points. This is part of the thing. It's and it's a shit show kind of. It's dirt, like you said. On a normal track, you're not worried about the asphalt coming up and blocking your view and all that kind of stuff. So the one thing I did see on Twitter, which I thought was interesting, I don't know if I have an opinion on it. What would you think of the All-Star race every year being the Bristol Dirt race?
I think that would be a great idea, but I don't mind it being a points race either. I mean, it's not like we talk all. This is what I don't get, right? Is these NASCAR fans will talk all year about how they hate the chase because it eliminates the importance of the regular season, blah blah blah. It gets rid of points, and then they're wanting to overreact about one goddamn points race in the season. Like I thought you said, the season doesn't matter now with the playoffs, and now we're all crying about one race being a points race. It's like, do the points matter through the season or don't they? Like, make up your goddamn mind. It's almost
especially in a year like this year where you've already got some random winners, and it's like you might just have 20 winners and points really might not matter. That's really what it might come down to. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Tired of losing in fantasy sports? Times are changing. Now it's just you versus the numbers. Prize Picks is the perfect place for you whether you are the biggest sports fan around or you're a seasoned vet in the daily fantasy space. On Prize Picks, you simply select 2 to 5 players and predict if they will go over or under their fantasy projection. Think Denny Hamlin is going to win the big race? Take his over and win real cash today. Prize Picks gives you the chance to win 10 times your money for getting 4 predictions correct. Entries are so simple. They can be made in less than 60 seconds. Sign up today at prizepicks.com or on the Prize Picks app and use code DIRTYAIR, that's DIRTYAIR, DIRTYAIR, to get a 100% match on your first deposit up to $100. Prize Picks truly is daily fantasy simplified. But okay, let's move on to this week. You mentioned it briefly. We are at Martinsville this week, the Blue Emu Maximum Pain Relief 500. I think I got that right. At Martinsville, short, flat track. Obviously, a couple guys come to mind here, a couple tracks come to mind. So that's what I'll ask you first. Are there any comparison tracks you look at? I mean, the first couple things that I think of are maybe a New Hampshire or Richmond, a Phoenix. Obviously, not the same, but somewhat similar. Are those the comparison tracks, and do they matter this week?
Yeah, this is kind of like like where we like to start every week is start like where we're looking at to try to make our decisions this week. And if we remember when we talked about Phoenix and we came out of the weekend of Phoenix, we talked in a recap and was talking about how the data from the flat tracks transferred over from 2020 to 2021. Like what we saw should have happened on the flat tracks by looking at your Phoenixes, your Martinsville, your Richmonds, your New Hampshires, those tracks you mentioned, is we saw that data carried over and those guys we expected to run well ran well at Phoenix. So I think a lot of that data that we looked at then is going to be important data to look at ahead of Martinsville. And also with Martinsville is it's a paperclip style track. So it's got really tight corners, long straightaways. And I know Brandon had mentioned ahead of Phoenix that he likes to look at these road courses for these flat tracks, which makes sense. I really like that concept. I really look at that when we come to a track like Martinsville, because Martinsville has that tight corner that you have to get off of perfectly to get down that long straightaway. It's very similar to racing a road course on these where they have these tight hairpin corners. You got to get on the throttle right, and you got to get down that straightaway because that's where you make your passes. Martinsville is very similar, so I'm looking at how guys did at the road course this year, how guys ran at Martinsville last year, Phoenix this year, Phoenix last year. So yeah, all these flat tracks kind of run similar, and I think the most important thing that we see is Penske's pretty much the dominant cars here at these flat tracks. Are you still there?
Yeah, you hear me?
Yeah, I was talking to Eric.
No, I was making sure you were done your thought before I kept going. But what I was gonna say is so I'm gonna pepper you with a lot of questions, and you kind of covered it first. So the first question that I had, I'm gonna combine them into two now. The fastest team all year has been Hendrick. When you say road driver, you think Chase Elliott. Initial thoughts on Chase Elliott. He hasn't been the best of Hendrick this year, but when you're looking at Hendrick as a team, they've been good, and obviously Chase is the road driver there.
I love that you're starting with Chase Elliott because this is a guy that has given me the most fits when I'm going through and doing these projections this week. Is like, what the fuck do we do with Chase Elliott? Like everything we look at from last year at Martinsville on the flat tracks, all the data is pointing to us to play Chase Elliott. But I mean, we've been in this situation at least 3 or 4 times this year where the data was telling us to play Chase Elliott, and he just hasn't showed up. It's got me in this situation where it's hard for me to project him, even though as great as he was last year at Martinsville with the start of the season. I mean, he was great at Phoenix last year, right? I mean, we expected him to come out and dominate Phoenix, and he just dropped an egg on us. I mean, he was a guy who I had highlighted out of that Phoenix race who underperformed off of his stats of what the data had told us from the year prior. So right now, where I have him projected at, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 guys projected for more points than Chase Elliott. So judging by, I think I glanced at pricing. I think it came out like maybe an hour before we started recording, so I didn't really get to go into do much. But where he was priced, I think he was probably 3rd highest priced. Man, it's going to be hard for me to find my way on Chase Elliott this week. Like, he might be a guy that I just have to cram in 20% of on my 20 max build just because. But yeah, I'm not heavy on Chase Elliott this week.
So at 11.4, like you said, he's the 3rd highest priced driver. At 11.4, he starts 5th. Realistically, how many laps are you trying to get out of him led? Because at that point,
if you are paying $11,000 for a guy this week, you're paying for him to break the slate. Like, you need him to go out and do that Martinsville Dominator performance. Let's go back and look at. Here, I got this data right here of what we typically see for DK points at Martinsville and Dominator points. So yeah,
I was gonna say when you say dominate and short tracks, I just think of Martin Truex, but we'll get to that in a second.
You should probably think of Martin Truex, but yes, Dominator points. Just at Martinsville in the last 2 years, right? We've had 3 performances in 4 races over 100 points on 3 different races. So that means there's a very good likelihood that somebody in this race is going to score north of 100 Dominator points, push close to 200 DK points. We saw Martin Truex 2 years ago put up 232. Brad Keselowski put up 199 2 years ago. Last year, Chase Elliott put up 167. Joey Logano in the spring race last year, 128. So somebody is going to put up 100-plus points in Saturday's race. If you're paying for a guy $11,000, you are expecting him to do that. Like, it doesn't make sense with the rest of your lineup if he's not going to do that, in my opinion.
Okay, so let's start at the top. We'll get even higher than $11,000. He starts 7th. He's $12,000 for a reason. Martin Truex Jr. How much is too much in terms of salary for him? Is $12,000 the right price, or is that too much?
You know what? This is pretty funny, right? Is with my projections, I went in before this show started because I didn't know we were going to have projections beforehand, and I put what the price would have to be for them to hit 5X based on where I projected them at. Martin Truex could have been priced at $19,000 and he still would have hit 5X based on what I projected him at. I got him projected for 125 laps led and 50 fast laps, which isn't like crazy when you look at like what a Dominator performance typically looks like at Martinsville. So I mean, that's really only projecting him for 98.75 points, but he's the guy I got projected for the most points on this slate. I'm going to have a lot of Truex. I think he's going to be chalky. A lot of people are going to have Truex, but he's just been so goddamn good here at Martinsville. He was great at Phoenix earlier this year, 52 fastest laps. Had the second best average position at Martinsville last year, 5th best average running position in the spring. I think he also put up a good amount of points there. Let me pull these up real quick for you.
Is this maybe a situation where all the stats point towards Truex, and if he's going to be so chalky, especially at $12,000, you just fade him, hold your nose, and hope for the best?
You know, you could. I mean, that's obviously a GPP strategy, but I think where I like going with Truex is a lot of these guys are going to still cram Truex in with one of these other studs, like a 10K guy, and they're going to be really struggling to fill out the rest of that lineup. I think you can get different with Truex is when you build with Truex, you build with him to break the damn slate. You build him and you don't pay up for the rest. And then you start and you look at this position differential that's on the slate. You build around Truex with position differential. That's how at least I'm probably going with the majority of my Truex builds. It's still early. I haven't punched any of my projections into the Opto to see what the Opto likes. So yeah, let's see here. Last year at Martinsville, Truex had 75 fastest laps in the fall and 54 fastest laps in the spring, led over 100 laps in both races. So it could be a situation where the data is telling us one thing, but I mean, if we looked at the data was telling us to play him at Phoenix, and it came through for us. And he's a guy who showed speed. He's had speed through the season. I mean, there's been, let's see, just look at what he's done so far, speed-wise for the season. I got all this stuff pretty accessible, so it won't take long. Give me just a second. Great radio, me talking about looking something up. So yeah, so far for the year, we saw him get 28 fastest laps at Homestead. Vegas, then the road course wasn't that great, but 53 fastest laps at Phoenix, which is a flat track. He ran well at the road course. He didn't put up a ton of fastest. He still got 8 fastest laps, which I guess is a lot at the road course, considering there's only 50 laps or something. But he ran, remember he had a strong car at the main race in the road course. He had a strong car in the Clash at the road course, that a flat track. Phoenix he was good at. I think a lot. I just think it's hard to get away from shares of Truex this week. Even if he's chalky, I think Chase is probably going to be a chalky play too that you could probably get off of. And I think Larson's going to be a guy that we can get to, that we can talk about now, that I think you're going to get off of, that I think is going to draw some ownership. Where's he's priced, second highest, right, on the slate?
Yep, so it's a $300 discount on Larson. He's 11.7. I do think he's going to get some because obviously you talked about being fast all year. There's been nobody faster than Kyle Larson all year. And when you look at DraftKings, you see that 19 next to his name as opposed to the 7. So it's like if Larson somehow gets to the front, he's already got basically 12 points of place differential built in over Truex. Even though this isn't necessarily a track where you're really going after place differential as much as dominating, Larson's a guy that you could look 50, 60 laps in the race, he's running top 5, and he's already made up that place differential.
Yeah, absolutely. And we all know that big number draws ownership, especially when it's a guy like Kyle Larson who's been fast all year. I think a lot of people are going to still ride the Larson train. I'm not paying that much for Larson this week. This is Larson's worst track on the circuit. Worst track. He has an average finish of like 22nd in his 12 races at Martinsville. 1 top 5. I think it's like 3 to 4 top 10s. This is his worst track on the circuit. and you want us to pay the highest price we've paid aside from the dirt race at Bristol on Kyle Larson? I just don't see it. He hasn't really showed us. I know he's in a different car. I know he's in a Hendrick car. He's going to be fast, right? We saw him make strides at Phoenix. But when we look back at that at Phoenix we should have saw Phoenix coming, right? When you look at like his tracks, how they rank, Phoenix was his 5th best track that he had through his career. So it wasn't that strange to see him make that big of a jump when he moved to the Hendricks cars. Now, is he going to move to a Hendricks car and all of a sudden really know how to get around Martinsville? I don't know. I mean, we've seen Kurt Busch has ran pretty competitive at Martinsville in the Ganassi equipment. So there's something else there. Some drivers just have tracks that they don't like. So Kyle Larson is a guy who I think you can get away from and avoid some of that ownership and be a little different this week.
Well, so you mentioned this was one of his worst tracks. So on the opposite side of that, when we get to the next range, 3 of the next 4 drivers are all Penske drivers, and we've all talked about how Penske at these flat tracks have been so good over the years. So you go to that next range. Brad's at $11,000, so it's a $400 discount off Chase. Brad's at $11,000. Then you got Joey at $10,700. Denny Hamlin, the Joe Gibbs driver in this group, is at $10,400, and then Ryan Blaney at $10,100. Are all 3 of these Penske guys in play? And then also, while you're here, about Denny Hamlin as well.
Yes, I love all these guys. All those guys you just mentioned. I know, like I started speaking, but said Chase Elliott was my 6th highest projected points total for this race. The 5 guys we mentioned right there: Truex, Logano, Blaney, Hamlin, Keselowski, are the 5 guys I have projected for more than Chase Elliott. Love them all. I think with this range, though, this is the range that I'm going to start looking at, like the Logano, Blaney, Hamlin, Keselowski, where when I construct lineups, this is where I think you can fit in 2 guys with their salary and still come out okay and still be able to hit some of that position differential. Like I said, I haven't really started making too many lineups. I've made a couple, but I think the discount you get off of that $12K price range on fading Truex in these kind of lineups where you're putting 2 of these guys in, it's a lot of upside in all these guys. Logano, we saw how awesome he was at Phoenix. We said before Phoenix how great he was at these flat tracks. He came out, showed us at Phoenix how good he is at these flat tracks. Now he's starting on the pole. I mean, we know, like we've talked an awful lot this year about how the pole sitter typically busts flat tracks. That's not typically the case. Getting out first on these flat tracks and getting that track position, keeping that track position, that turns into fast laps and lap sleds. Logano is behind Truex. He's probably my 2nd favorite play, but he's again might be a guy that will be high owned. I don't know. I expect him to be high owned at Phoenix, and he wasn't. People have been fading the pole sitter. He's only been averaging around like a 30% ownership a little bit this year, a little down from last year. So maybe we get him at a better ownership, but I don't think it matters. Like in this race with like these guys like Logano and Truex who could put up 150, 175 points, like, do you give a shit if he's 50% owned? If he does that? Because if you don't have him, you can't come back from that.
And with a guy like Logano, I know we're not even really looking at any of the stats from the dirt race, but the momentum of coming off a win is still the momentum of coming off a win. It counts as every other win, and it's still the same thing of, hey, we ran well at a track that we weren't really expecting to run well at because who knew what was going to happen? We won. Like, let's keep it going. I think that's one of those things.
And the other good thing about Logano is when people look at like last year, they're going to see their last year's race winners at Martinsville being Martin Truex and Chase Elliott. They're not going to see Logano. Like, unless you're looking at the data, Logano's not going to jump off at you as, a race winner. That's what a lot of people go off of. And he had the 3rd best average running position at Martinsville in this fall, the best average running position at Martinsville in the spring. He's led a shit ton of laps, a lot of fast laps. Yeah.
So I know you haven't really started building as much, but if somebody's building a single entry lineup from these guys, 10,000 and up, who's the first guy that you would say to put in your lineup? Is it Truex or is it somebody else?
It's Truex. I think if you're going out at one lineup on this slate, I think you're playing Truex and cramming in some of these position differential plays we have on this slate.
So then we'll get to some of the guys at the bottom in a second, but instead of going through every single guy on the slate, because that'll literally take forever, these guys in this middle range, I mean, a lot of good drivers in here haven't performed as well, and then some other drivers that are having better years than normal. Harvick obviously not having a normal Kevin Harvick year, but you've got guys like Bowman even after disappointing. I think he lost a gear or something in the last race, and then obviously Byron's had a good year. You've got a bunch of these guys in this range, in this middle range. What are you looking at? And not necessarily name value, but also if you're playing somebody in here, why are you playing them? Are you playing them to lead laps? Specifically when you're looking at some of these guys.
Can you give me? I don't have the price in front of me, so can you give me some names there?
Yeah, so I'll go down real quick and just give some in order. So Kyle Busch is 9.8, Harvick is 9.6, Bowman's 9.2, Kurt Busch is 8.9, and Byron's 8.7. So out of those guys.
Okay, guys I like in this range are Bowman. You said he was at what price? 91?
9.2.
9.2, yeah. I had him at 46, projection for 46 fantasy points. Bowman's a guy who we saw run. He typically runs well at road courses. We've seen him run well at the Daytona road course. Phoenix, he kind of struggled a little bit, which is a little concerning at the 16th best average running position there. But Martinsville, if we looked at his data from the flat tracks last year, we see a bump when we get to Martinsville over these tracks like Phoenix and New Hampshire. He ran considerably better at Martinsville. He ran 8th best average running position in the spring, 7th best average running position in the fall. Bowman's been fast all year. I like him for a top 10 here, starting 20th. That's going to give you 46 points, and that's right around that 5x mark that we're looking for, especially at that price range. Another guy here that I like is at Kurt Busch in this range. He's a guy I got predicted for 47 points. Same story with Kurt. He can definitely finish in the top 10, starting 21st, because there's when we're talking position differential here on this slate, we're not talking guys who are going to score 25 position differential points, right? We're talking about like 12, 13, 14. And this is right in that range where Kurt Busch falls. I can definitely see a top 10 finish. We looked at last year. He had the 7th best average running position in the spring, 4th best average running position in the fall. It was a little concerning that he did not run as well at Phoenix as we expected him to. So I am going to have some Kurt, but I'm probably going to temper my expectations a little bit compared to where I was at on him going into Phoenix as far as exposures over my 20 lineups. Harvick, Kyle Busch, not interested in at this price. Harvick is just a guy who, Martinsville has not been one of his greatest tracks in the past, and we know he's struggling, so I don't see this being the week. Harvick's going to turn it around and lead some laps. Kyle Busch, we know, guy has struggled. Martinsville was no different last year. I remember this was the spring race last year. Martinsville was when he just shit the bed on the setup right off the bat. Went 2 laps down in the first 20 laps. I don't think it's that bad, but you need somebody like Kyle here to get you a ton of fast laps, and we just haven't seen that out of him this season. And Byron, sorry, this is a guy in the range that I like pivoting to. That I'm going to have some lineups where I pivot to him off of the Kurt and Bowman. Those guys are going to be higher owned than Byron. He's starting 3rd, but I think he's got just enough track position. He's been just fast enough. He showed us at the road course how fast he was there. He had a top 10 car at Phoenix with the. There will be crazier things than William Byron getting out in front of this race early and running in the top 5 of this race and putting up some fast laps. So I do like Byron as a pivot off of those guys.
And so the next range is where there's a slightly higher ceiling of some of those place differential points. I know we talked about earlier with Larson and then a couple of these guys where you're looking 12, 15, place differential points are great at a track like this. You get to the next range. You've got Chris Bell. He starts 23rd at 8,400. Almirola's 8,100. He starts 31st. DiBenedetto is 7,800. He starts 22nd. Reddick starts 13th at 7,500. Bubba starts 25th at 7,300. Some place differential guys here. Any interest in these guys?
Yeah, this is you listed a lot of guys that I like there. Let's start with Chris Bell. He's a guy who, what was he priced at? You said
8,400.
8,400. That's way too cheap for where he's. I guess it's not, but I think that's a very good value. I got him projected for 46 fantasy points. He's a guy who we saw run really strong at Phoenix. He started 4th there at Phoenix, ran inside the top 7, top 8 for the majority of the race, had the 7th best average running position, even put up a 10 fastest laps. He's a guy we talked about out of Phoenix that we were very encouraged by what we saw out of Phoenix and knew we were going to kind of take that into consideration as we started getting to some of these other short tracks, because Christopher Bell was a guy who made his bread and butter on these short tracks in the Xfinity Series, and we were waiting for him to make that leap last year, and he never did, but now he's in this Gibbs car. We like the strides he made at Phoenix. I think starting 23rd, you definitely got top 10 upside out of Christopher Bell here. Moving off of him, it's going to be crazy, but I am in love with Bubba Wallace here at 7,300, starting 25th. This is the range you want to start Bubba Wallace at. Starting 25th. We talked about this earlier in the season. We had him at around this range, and it paid off for us and at a low ownership. I don't know if we're going to get so lucky on ownership with him this week, but Bubba's a guy who Martinsville is a track he runs well at. In the fall last year, he had the 12th best average running position. We saw him at Phoenix step up and have a 15th place car. He had an average running position of 15th, ran some fastest laps. I think we definitely see that out of Bubba this week. I think a top 14, top 15 finishes is definitely in order. And for that price tag, yeah, I think you can get a lot of value out of Bubba here.
So we can kind of go through some of the value guys. Instead of going through all of them, what are some of the guys that you like towards the bottom? You give me a name, I'll throw you their price out.
Hold on. We didn't talk about Eric Almirola. I don't know what the fuck DraftKings was doing here.
I just think he's been so bad. I just think nobody's going to play. He's just been so bad that it's at the point where people are like, I'd rather just not have Eric Almirola and kill me every week.
But $8,100. That's for
no, and I agree. He starts 31st.
I'm not even gonna. We'll get to where he ran last year before in just a moment. But just looking at this season, right so far, Phoenix, he started 32nd. The track is hard to pass, flat track, just like this, and he finished 11th. Came in at a 28% ownership there, and he was priced at $9,000. So he's $900 cheaper, starting one position further back, right?
One position closer. He's 31st.
One position closer, $900 cheaper. And this is a track that we saw last year in the fall. He had the 10th best average running position. Didn't do so hot in the spring. Yeah, I think I'm going to have a lot of Almirola this week. I think everybody's going to at this price. It's just really going to depend on what people do with their builds. If you're cramming in two of these 10K guys, it's probably going to get hard to get Almirola, considering where we're getting ready to pivot to the value on this slate. Why don't you tell me?
I think when you're looking at Almirola, and I know it's not the way to do it, but people just look at his finishes outside of the 11th at Phoenix, which is the comparable course of this, a 36th, 20th, 38th, 30th, 17th, 34th. But then the other one, when you look at, I think, which concerns me somewhat, is just going down the fastest laps, 0, 0, 0, 0, 1. You're not expecting a bunch out of him, but a couple, some every race. Almirola, obviously Stuart Haas hasn't been as great this year, but I think that's also what's concerning is he hasn't had more than one fast lap in an entire race.
You are definitely right about that. Obviously we're not really looking for fastest laps here. We just want you're looking for him at this price range to run around top 15, and I think that's.
But that just tells you what kind of car he's
right,
and how he's been driving.
But if we look at where he finished at the two tracks that we think are probably most comparable to Martinsville going in that we've raced on this season is the Daytona Road Course in Phoenix, at least in my opinion, and he finished 17th and 11th. Those are his two best races this season. So it's not a secret. We can look for reasons to fade him, but I think it's gonna be hard to at that price. Like I said, unless it's just you can't fit him in with value, because there is none on the slate. Who are some of these guys who are priced down low there? Because I don't have that in front of me.
So I'm just gonna go through the names. I'm not even gonna give the salaries. You can tell me which of these guys come out to you, and then I'll give you the salaries. I'll just go down in order of the salaries. So it starts at 7,000, or it starts at 7,100 with Austin Dillon. So you got Austin Dillon, Cole Custer, Ryan Newman, Eric Jones, Chris Buescher, Chastain, and Briscoe. Any interest in any of those guys?
The guy I have projected for the highest points in that rate. Well, the highest points in that range was Cole Custer at 33 points, with him starting 26. But you said he is
7K.
He's 7K. Still that's a little steep for that kind of result out of Cole Custer. He needs to be really priced around 65, 64. But I think it's still close enough that I'm probably going to have some shares of Cole Custer, because I think I have him projected right now for an 18th place finish, which is right around where he ran at Phoenix. He ran a little better than that in the fall. He wrecked out in the spring here at Martinsville. He's a guy who's probably ran more consistent this season than the rest of the Stuart Haas cars. He's had some bad luck at the end of these races, so it wouldn't surprise me to see Custer step up and finish like 15th, 14th here and cross over that 5x value. So probably going to have some Custer. Dillon, I'm not interested in starting 18th. Not a great track for him historically. Didn't show us a lot of speed in Phoenix, so starting 18th at that price, not interested. Briscoe,
So
this range.
Yeah, so I was going to say, so I guess the easier way to ask is, which of these guys do you have projected for about 30 points or so? Because then these are the guys that we can talk about hitting value in this range. Some of these
I think Ras
lower price guys.
Chastain is a guy, what'd you say he was priced at, about low 6?
63. 63, yep.
He's a guy who I got projected for 30 points, which is right around that 5x mark. That's only finishing 20th. We saw him run, I mean, I know it was the dirt race last week. He looked good there until he wrecked out. He ran well the week prior. He's a guy who, we don't have a whole lot of data to go off of him at Martinsville. He didn't run a whole lot there at Xfinity. So this is more of a gut call on Ras Chastain, just of where he's ran at. I mean, Phoenix, he did pretty well at. He averaged running position of 21st. So I can anticipate him running around that same mark in this race, which is going to produce that 5x. So he's a guy who you can look to save some salary.
And a couple other guys we haven't gotten to yet. The first guy that comes out to me, he's been shockingly consistent can be this year. He's 5,800 because he starts 6th this week, but Ricky Stenhouse Jr., I mean, at 5,800, you're kind of just asking him to ride around in the top 10 and finish somewhat in the top 10 at $5,800, right? You can even lose at a track like this. You don't even mind losing a couple different place differentials if he's going to get, an 8th or a 9th and get those points at 5,800, right?
Yeah, I love Ricky again this week, starting 6th. Obviously, with Ricky starting 6th on a short track, you're probably not going to want to have a ton of exposure to him, but he's going to be a guy that you're going to be able to go to pivot off of some of these guys who are starting further back. Those can probably garner a little bit more ownership. No one's going to play Ricky this week. No one's been playing Ricky all season. They're definitely not going to play him starting 6th. I still think he can run top 10 and he can hold on to this track position. I have him projected for a 10th place finish, which is 30 fantasy points, which is over that 5x mark. Obviously, he doesn't have to do that to hit that 5x. You'd be happy coming out of this with a 13th, 14th place finish out of Ricky Stenhouse, especially if you pivoted off of one of these other guys who ends up busting. That's what you're looking at with a guy like Ricky. You're looking for that upside. Yeah, he could finish top 8, top 9, run, maintain on that hold on that track position, but you really, I know this is going to sound crazy, are just looking for him not to kill your lineup and hoping one of these other guys busts out.
And the other guy that I'm curious what his ownership is going to be in this range, he starts 14th. He's $5,500, Michael McDowell. I assume he'll be fairly popular, but once again, starting 14th is, higher than you'd like for a Michael McDowell kind of guy, but he's $5,500.
Yeah, I don't want any part of Michael McDowell here starting 14th. It's I have him projected for right now for 17 fantasy points. That's a finish in right around 20th. He had the 26th best average running position at Phoenix. I know he ran kind of decent here in the fall last year. I mean, in the spring last year, he had a 17th best average running position, so he could finish inside that top 20. I just what he showed me in Phoenix and what these front row sports cars showed us at Phoenix, it's just not. It's not something I'm going to get behind from the 14th place starter position. Like I just don't see him as running top 15 and coming through for that value on this week.
So when we talk about jamming in those top guys, obviously you got to get some of these guys down here, and we talked about using Ricky, but always don't want to. Ricky, as consistent as he's been, he is named Ricky Stenhouse for a reason. You can't go full board on him. So I'll give you a couple of these other guys that are down here.
I'd rather go over Mike McDowell, like a guy like Daniel Suarez, who's showed us this.
So you'd rather pay up the extra $400 and just get from Suarez.
We're talking. I mean, $400. He's still below 6K, right, Suarez?
Suarez is $5,900.
But he's a guy who can kill your lineup just as much as Michael McDowell can. But I think he's got upside that Michael McDowell doesn't have in that trackhouse equipment. I think wouldn't surprise me to see Suarez hold on to this track position, get a late caution on the end, a couple good cars rack out, and maybe finish top 10. I don't see that happening out of Mike McDowell. But still, these are plays that we're looking at. I think in this range, like when you're searching for value on the slate and you're playing 20 lineups, there's not a guy that screams out as, "Oh my God, I need him in 75% of my lineups." I think a lot of these guys you're gonna want to broaden out your exposure, tighten up your pool at the top. Like, I mean, my goal right now is I'm sticking to those five guys we mentioned, that Truex, Gano, Blaney, Hamlin, Keselowski range. Sticking to those guys, building on position differential around Truex, combining 2 of those top tier guys in my other builds, and really just differentiating down here in this value range. Spreading out, trying to get some shares of these low-owned guys who have that upside potential, like a Daniel Suarez, like a Ricky Stenhouse. I know Alfredo, we haven't talked about him, but I mean, good Lord. What is DK? 5,300 has made him pretty much a free square. It'll be hard for people not to play him at that price because he really can't kill your lineup starting 35th. I think he's really only got to finish around like 25th place, which is asking a lot out of Alfredo, unfortunately.
Is there any interest down there in pivoting to somebody like a Haley or a LaJoy, who obviously they haven't been great, but neither has Alfredo? And if Alfredo is really going to be all that ownership, Haley starts 30th, LaJoy starts 34th. Yeah, there is that 4 or 5 different place differential, but if it's a 40% difference in ownership, I mean, Alfredo, I have no idea what I assume he's going to be 60, 50%. I don't even know what I don't know.
He's going to be ridiculously high on, but I mean, he hasn't really drew any ownership this year. Let's see here.
But like you said, it's 5,300 and he starts 35th. It's like almost like it's just
he was 5,500 and started 32nd at Atlanta and only pulled in 16% ownership.
Yeah.
So 5,500 starting 27th at Homestead, pulled in 13%. 5,600 starting 27th at Vegas, 8%. Starting 28th at Phoenix for 5,800, the price a little higher, 8%. So I don't know. I mean, for some reason, we're not playing Anthony Alfredo this season, and I think I don't have it here because I kind of excluded Bristol Dirt race and the Daytona Super Speedway race from my season stats just for obvious reasons. But I don't think Alfredo carried very high ownership in that race either.
And it's one of those things where it's just so weird, where it's like you expect from, like, he's so cheap, he's at the back, he's not great equipment, but he's not in one of these like throwaway teams, he's not running in a cardboard box out there. It's like, at some point he's got to have a halfway decent finish. I mean, that's how people are going to look at it, right?
I mean, yeah, he's obviously hasn't ran very well this season, but he still hasn't crushed you for his price. He's gotten almost 5x value at the road course, and aside from that, 3 of them were pretty much close to 4x. So I mean, yeah, he sucks, but he's not like where he's starting for his price. It's hard for him to really crush your lineup. Unless he pulls like my freaking punts at the dirt race last week did, and just where all my fucking punts wrecked together in the first 3 cars out. So.
Well, so as we've been doing this, I've been kind of building a lineup as we go based on some of the guys you talk about. So here's what I've built, and I'm going to let you give me your first impression on what you think. So I went with Logano and Truex. Those are the 2 guys from the top. And then it's got Kurt Busch, Bubba Wallace, Anthony Alfredo, and Ricky Stenhouse.
Yeah, that's not a bad lineup.
When you hear that, where are you looking to improve? Where are you, like, what, how do you adjust that?
I think playing Logano and Truex together is a mistake. I don't because like I said, I'm going with the mentality of if I'm playing Truex, I'm going with him to break the slate. And if that's the case, do I need to pay $10,700 for Logano? Like, what do I realistically expect to get out of him? He's not going to crash that 100-point mark too. We're not going to see 2 guys do that, right? So I would, if in that instance, like I said, when I'm building Truex, I'm going Truex, then I'm going to go position differential off that, so I wouldn't be needing to punt to both Stenhouse.
Okay, so I just adjusted off of that. So I'm going to go the other route. Instead of going Truex, go Logano and Keselowski.
Okay.
Now you have $1,000 extra to spend. So between Kurt Busch Bubba, Alfredo, Stenhouse, who was the first guy you're looking to upgrade? Obviously, I know prices, but out of those guys, who would be the first guy you would be looking to upgrade out of those four guys for $1,000?
Oh, that's a good question. I would probably look to what's $1,000 get you off of Ricky?
So the $1,000 off of Ricky will get you up to $6,800. So that would be not many guys we mentioned: Newman,
Okay.
Jones, Busher, Chastain.
Okay.
So if we're looking to get off, let's see if we can get off Bubba, because I already tried to do. If you're Kurt Busch, that $1,000 doesn't get you much. It gets you Kyle Harvick. It could get you up to Bowman. That's only $300 more, so you could even do that and do something else. But if we're looking for, I'll put Ricky back in there. We've got $8,000 or 83, depending on what we're doing. So here, this is what we can do. We can go with Kurt Busch and Almirola. And that, I think, is a Jason team that I've just built.
So who'd you get there?
So we've got Logano, Kurt Busch, Stenhouse, Keselowski, Alfredo, and Almirola.
Yeah, I'm sure I'll probably end up playing a lineup very similar to that, or a few built that way. I mean, punting twice on this slate when we talked about, like, here's the thing, is when you're 20 max building, and if you're going to go that route where we're doing a lot of 2 punts, you're going to end up with a lot of exposure on these guys, right? And we just talked about how these are guys who we don't want to be at that 50, 60% exposure. Like, these are guys who want to be at probably like 25, 30% across their lines. And there's just not many options if you are max. But if you're single entering, I don't mind that. I don't mind that line at all. I can tell you kind of where I went. I didn't, like I said, I put this together literally right off the bat, right when they came out, just to see what I would get if I went Truex balanced. It would have been Truex, Bubba, Matty D, Chastain, Bell, and Almirola. So there's not a guy under 6,300 if you go that route.
And then, so I guess the other question, we talked about it a little bit earlier, but between Bowman and Kurt Busch, $300 is the price difference. So Bowman's $300 higher than Kurt Busch. If you're 20 maxing or you're doing something like that, if you have the money, are you always paying up to Bowman, or what percentage of Bowman versus Kurt Busch would you use there?
No, I don't. I think these guys are guys you can play together, and you're definitely gonna want some exposure. These guys laid away from each other because these guys are going to carry some ownership. So if all your lineups have them both together, then you're never going to get that leverage if one of them busts, and it's going to crush all your lines if one of them busts. So I don't think you need to Alex Bowman's priced for more, and I got $300. I got $300. I could get the Bowman and force him into. You don't have to do that.
Now, are you of the belief where maybe there's a lineup that you built and you've got the money for Bowman and you put that lineup in twice and you just put Bowman in one of them and Kurt Busch in the other one and literally the exact same lineup? Is that something you do sometimes?
Yeah, I've done that route. I've started. You know what I've discovered as of late is I'm not very good at building lineups.
Let the computer do it.
Yeah, I'm good at making the projections and finding the plays, but when it comes to building the lineups, I just have a hard time. I do stupid stuff like that, right? When I'm building 20 lineups out, it's well, I'll just make 50% of these Kurt and 50% of these Alex Bowman. But you gotta have, you can't just play Kurt and Bowman in that range, right? There's other guys who you're gonna want to pivot off of as well. So that's especially it's NASCAR. You want to make sure you have some exposure to quite a few guys. And I'm not trying to say, oh, fucking play them all, but
I always tell people, NASCAR and UFC, the two sports, you can be looking great, and then 2 seconds later, your car is damaged, your fighter is on the ground, knocked out cold, and the entire slate's changed. That's what these two are.
You can get everything right and still lose your ass.
Any interest in any of these bottom guys? Anything, or is Alfredo at 5,300 the lowest you're going?
Alfredo's is probably as low as I'm going. I know Haley,
LaJoy, Davison, McLeod.
Yeah, LaJoy. I don't want. I know you mentioned LaJoy. I don't have any interest in LaJoy. That car has been junk all year. I don't anticipate him being able to run inside the top 27, top 28. I mean, you might as well. I think LaJoy is, you just mark him up as another Aspire car and expect him to run around where that number 77 has been running. And the same thing with Haley. These guys are going to need a lot of attrition. They're starting towards the back. They're in terrible equipment. They're going to be multiple laps down very quickly. So you're going to need a lot of cautions to keep them on the lead lap, and just going to need a lot of attrition for those guys to pay off. So I don't know. I mean, I could punch all these numbers into the optimizer and find out that they really like Justin Haley. I don't know.
All right, so anything before we get out of here, anything that we didn't cover, anybody we didn't cover, or covered most, I think, everybody?
Let's see. I know we spoke a little bit about Matty D, but he's a guy, Wood Brothers car, Penske ties, ran well at flat tracks. I mean, pretty much as the Penske cars go on these flat tracks, so does Matty D. So he's a guy who's going to have top 10 upside this week. So yeah, I don't think there's really anything else screaming out at me. I know if Brandon was here, he'd probably tell you he likes Ryan Preece. He'd probably tell you he likes Eric Jones. So these are guys.
Well, he's not, and so we have some important business to tend to, because he said that he wanted Martin Truex for one and done. So now me and you, the two on the show this week, I was going to say we need to decide: are we giving him Martin Truex, or if one of us is picking first, are we taking Truex? Do we get Truex?
Who picks first?
So I picked first this week.
Wow. And he presumptuously just said he's taking two. He didn't give us a list, huh? He just gave us one pick.
So should I be a good podcast host and say, you know what, you can have Martin Truex, or should I be...
I'm going to leave this, make this your call.
Oh, my God.
So then you got to pick for him, though.
This is like when two kids go to their parents and like one of them did something wrong and the other kid's like, it wasn't me, look at him. Like, I didn't do it.
I think he stole Martin Truex from you is what I think.
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to be a pussy. He can have Martin Truex. I'm going to give it to him because I'm just going to take Joey Logano. That's what I'm going to do.
Joey Logano, good call. He's got Truex. Give me Ryan Blaney.
You said you wanted Cody Ware. Is that right?
Oh, Ryan Blaney.
All right,
I love. By the way, who do you think I have projected? I have Truex. You're probably gonna know fucking now. I put it on a tee for you. But Truex and Logano are my two highest projected guys. Who's third?
I mean, you can't say it like that because now I'm definitely gonna get it wrong. Is it Brad?
No, Ryan Blaney.
Oh,
just pick them. Come on.
I know. I thought you were making it too easy. I thought that was gonna be like one of those where it's like, oh, I'm gonna say Ryan Blaney. You're like, no, of course it's his Penske teammate, Brian Keselowski. Like I thought that's what was coming, but nope. I overthought that one. So all right, we'll do that again. Jason, I think the third highest projected guy you have is Ryan Blaney. Am I correct?
You are correct. Very fast here. Martinsville is a track he does very well at. We saw his speed at the Daytona at the road course. He was quick at Phoenix. He ran well. He had over 50 fastest laps, I think, in both Martinsville races last year. Even one he started kind of middle of the pack. So I love Ryan Blaney. I think he's definitely a guy who I think could lead a lot of laps here if Logano or Truex don't. Because I think that's what we need to look at. Like, we look at these slates, if not Truex, if not Logano, then who? And I think after that it would be Blaney. And then, okay, if not Truex, if not Logano, if not Blaney, then who? I think this is a range of a lot of people. Well, I actually think a lot of people will go Chase Elliott before Blaney. But definitely by this range, a lot of people are going to have Elliott in their list. And I still think I'm going Hamlin, Keselowski there. And then you can throw in guys like a William Byron, who has a touch of win equity. Like of those guys we mentioned, like once you get past like Truex, Logano, Blaney, Hamlin, Keselowski, Elliott, Larson, the guys that could win this race, like then who do you think would be next?
So you think Byron has better win equity than Bowman because of where he starts?
Yes, absolutely.
If
Bowman
Bowman
easier to hold that position, then, but I mean, obviously one missed lug nut on a pit stop, then there goes all that track position for Byron.
So let's say they started similar positions, 8th and 9th or something like that, who would have more win equity in your mind, Byron or Bowman?
In that instance, it would be a coin flip in that instance. Like, I think they'd be really neck and neck. I think it'd probably put them equal. Is that wrong, or do you want me to pick? I'll pick Bowman.
No, I was say I think that kind of sums it up. Is I think that's kind of how you look at these guys. They've both been pretty similar in terms of speed this year. Obviously, Byron has the win, but it's the difference of if Bowman started in the top 5, he's got more win equity. If Byron starts in the top 5, he's got more win equity. I think that's just what it is.
Absolutely. But Byron has made like a huge stride from last year to this year, the way he's ran. And I mean, he's a young guy, a little younger than Alex, a little less. So I think Byron will probably pass Alex at some point, probably this season.
Talk about momentum. He's got that iRacing momentum.
He does.
So I know you're going to have some Xfinity stuff, and I'm sure you're going to change your mind on a couple things and definitely lock in a couple guys. Let everybody know where they can find your stuff out.
Yeah, we all know like a lot of shit happens through the week. We'll have, who knows, somebody's going to fail, post pre-race something, who knows. So follow my content. And obviously these projections are just my first look, so they'll likely change as I start tweaking some of these fast laps. I may chicken out on my whole Chase Elliott hate. I really wished Brandon was here so I could have seen where he was at on Chase. But no, check out my website, www.freenascardfs.com. So we have my content. I'll be doing the Xfinity series like you mentioned, Cup Race, cheat sheets, GPP cores, which I think a lot of people are liking. I do my little breakdown where I write a few words about the slate. So check it out.
And make sure you give him a follow as well if you already aren't on Twitter, DFS NASCAR on Twitter. Make sure you check out my stuff, betwithbommel.com, and I am gambling DFS tips on Twitter. I give out some NASCAR bets. I'll dive into more some of that in the odds later in the week when I can get more into some of the value plays and matchups and top fives and top tens and all of that. I do gambling across all sports. Obviously, we do this podcast every week. So we thank you guys for listening. As always, whatever platform you're on, make sure you rate, subscribe, review, like, whatever it asks you to do. All of it always helps us out. Definitely keeping this free and, you know, just provide. I'd like to give you guys the information, let you guys do what you want. With that information, like I said,
Free is the way to be.
We are here every week. That's what we say. Freemium is the new premium. You know, that's how, you know, if we give you bad information, we shouldn't be taking money from you. That's how we look at it. So we'll give you this kind of stats every week. We're back next week for where are we? Richmond next week, right? I think. So we are.
Hey,
we're back
and if
next
you guys
week.
have listened to this far, then that. Sorry, I mean to cut you off. If you guys listen this far, means you're obviously fans of the show. Best way to support the show. I know you guys hear that Prize Picks ad in the middle of this. Go to Prize Picks. Play a little Prize Picks. It's a fun new way to play daily fantasy sports. You can use that promo code Dirty Air. It's just Dirty Air, right? Yeah, Dirty Air. Yeah. And it will get you a 100% match on your first deposit. But most importantly, what that does, like you get to play on the site and have a little bit of fun. You might end up losing your money. You know, it's gambling. That's what typically happens. But you get to have a little bit of fun. You could put like $25 on that, and Prize Picks gives us $50 for you depositing. So it's like a great way to support the show and get behind us without nothing out of your pocket. You just get to play a little new DFS that you may not be hip to in the past, and money comes to us. So check it out, but you got to use that promo code Dirty Air, or it does no good for us.
Yep, and if you check out my betting article every week, I've got the promo code, everything in there. I also put my Prize Pick play of the week in there. Past couple weeks has been good, so obviously that's always, you know, like Jason said, gambling is gambling. But if you win a couple slates and you can start up a couple bucks, and then, you know, maybe you put $25 in, you're good for the whole season. And you're just kind of playing for fun, and that's kind of how it is. So yeah, definitely check out Prize Picks. Make sure you use that code Dirty Air. Like Jason said, we're back next week for Richmond. So on behalf of Jason this week, as always, I'm Ryan Baumel. Thank you guys for listening. Best of luck. And since Brandon is not here, Jason, I'm going to say it. No whammies.
Good luck, guys.